Welcome to this installment of the Louisiana REALTORS Legislative Insider Series, featuring Senator Bret Allain from the Bayou region and Representative Stuart Bishop from the Acadiana region. These gentlemen chair the powerful House Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. In this video, they delve into the Louisiana tax policy, why it is the way it is, how the policy may change in the future, and how all this affects you as a realtor.
My main emphasis, being chairman of Revenue and Fiscal Affairs, is mainly the tax code. And tax reform, I think, has a long way to go. This year we started, before the session, we actually spent a good bit of time in D.C. meeting with the Tax Foundation, Council for State Taxation, Multi-State Tax Commission, and talking to them about all of them score Louisiana and some of them don't score Louisiana very well. And look, this directs a lot of investment in the state. People look at our tax scores and decide whether or not to invest in the state of Louisiana or not. So I think it's imperative that we look at the things that these organizations are scoring us on and take a very hard look at it. Louisiana is pretty much an outlier in a lot of things they do, and our score reflects that.
Everybody who pays taxes, they deserve to drive on a smooth road. They deserve to cross a bridge that they're not worried about the weight limit and the problems with it. Ports and airports create commerce for the state of Louisiana. And like I said, clean water is an extremely important topic to me. Going forward, when we set up the Capital Outlay Savings Program, we put $105 million aside for that. Going forward, we need to focus on the essential needs of the people of Louisiana, which, as far as I'm concerned, are roads, bridges, ports, airports, and every community deserves clean water. We need to fix the water systems that are down. So going forward, we need to focus on what's right for the people of Louisiana. So I intend on doing that. I did that this past session, and I intend on doing that for the next 3 years. It's focusing on what their real needs are.
Yes, somebody will call a special session. We have to. The unemployment insurance trust fund is almost broke. We started with $1 billion before the pandemic in the trust fund, and it's dwindled down. I think we run out of money sometime in early October completely, which triggers additional taxes on businesses that we're trying to avoid. So we've got to address the trust fund and the balance in it because there are a lot more people drawing on unemployment than are paying into it. We've also going to have to address the federal funds if there are changes made that we are hoping and anticipating are being made. So a lot of things will have to be addressed. I think they'll all be fiscal in nature. I don't think we'll see anything out of the scope of those two things, whether the legislature calls it or the governor calls it, it's toss a coin. I think one or the other will. The legislature absolutely has the right, as you saw last session, to call itself in. So depending on what the call looks like, that the governor, hopefully the governor and the legislature can agree on what needs to be in the call and what doesn't. Some things we should put off. We have a fiscal session coming up in April that we can deal with a lot of these things that aren't immediate. But these needs that we feel we're going to have to come in for in October are timely, and they'll have to be addressed before April of next year.
When do we go into a special? I'm not exactly positive at this point. It's a matter of when do we know what federal money that's going to come down. The sooner the better. assure you, real estate, the realtors will be taken care of. I completely understand their situation. I'm in the construction business. Even though I'm one of the first people on the job, they're one of the last people on the job. And we all work together through the entire process. And I will promise you, I'll make sure the realtors have a voice and that they are involved in this process to make sure that business is taken care of. Housing industry, commercial industry, it's huge for Louisiana. We have to bring it back because it's slowing down in some areas. And we have to bring it back, and we have to fight to bring it back. And we all have to do it together.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm only one vote, but a homestead exemption, I think, will stay where it is. Over the years, the homestead exemption, $75,000 back when it was first started in the 80s ain't $75,000 anymore. So it's kind of phased itself out to only about half the value it was before. But I'm firmly in my stance of protecting the homestead exemption where it is. Transfer tax, that's a no-brainer. We're not going to become California. We hear that California does transfer taxes every time you sell real estate. I'm not for that. And most of that goes to the locals, and God knows there's challenge locally also. Local governments are hurting also. But the transfer tax is not the way to go. There's always rumblings about doing that, and who gets caught in the net, who knows? There's attorneys, and so some would like to do the attorneys and not the realtors for obvious reasons. But no, I don't think that's going to gain a whole lot of traction. I don't see that happening. The argument is, by those that propose it, you can broaden the base and lower the rate. There are other ways, better ways I think we have that we can lower the personal income tax rate or other rates that are out there. But I don't see it gaining much steam. You have too good of an organization and too good a lobbyist to let that happen. I hope to see tax reform brought forward. It may take a constitutional convention to do a complete tax reform as I envision it needs to be. We are not rated very well by a lot of these organizations for a good reason. We have what they call double dipping here and outlying structures there. I think that if I can move forward tax reform, that will benefit this state for generations to come. The other thing I'd like to do is the capital outlay process, to try and get that in a situation to where it's more manageable than I've seen it in the past. But reform in the capital outlay process would be another thing that I'd like to do. If we could accomplish those two and start producing balanced budgets to where we can show the state a path forward for being able to live within its means into the future, I think that would be a huge gain.
We have to simplify the tax code. It's been tried for years, and it has to be done. I mean, it's hard enough as a businessman to figure out the tax code. I wish I knew everything about the tax code, but I'll be the first one to say, even as a chairman, even as a small businessman, it's so complex and so hard to understand that I just think average citizen, it's even more difficult for them to understand. So we have to work together in order to figure out what is the right plan for Louisiana. And if there was a time to do it, the time to do it is now. If you look at everything going on in the state right now, now is the time that we come to the table. Much like tort reform this past session, it was the right time. And I think the future session, it's the right time to simplify Louisiana's tax system. reach out, talk to us, talk to your local legislators, talk to the members of Ways and Means. Let's all figure out this situation together so we can move Louisiana forward.